Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. We all have a story. Everybody has a story. There's a story actually in everything. Everything you do, every minute of every day, there's a story. But your story, maybe you need to change it. We're going to talk about that today. She's somebody that pilots around stories as a writer, a coach, somebody who's developed a system to help us. It's called the Horowitz system, by the way, help us navigate life in many different ways. And she also helps people with their writing and also their stories. Marilyn Horowitz joins us once again on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you doing?
Very well. Now, you have some fantastic books already. Bad Girl Pie, which has been very well received in the last couple of weeks on Amazon. Also, Word of the Day, another book. So insightful. This is inspiration, creative tools, moving your life forward, even from a creative aspect. You're working on a new book, and it's about our story and how we may want to change our story. We're also going to run into some trouble. That's how I interpret the book. And it, by the way, it's not even published yet. It's a work in progress, which I love because, we're getting kind of, from the author's eyes of things. But tell us about that book that you're working on.
Since I started out in this business, I'm the kid in the fairy tale that goes, but the emperor's not wearing any clothes. So, for better or for worse. So what I have observed is that we cling to our stories at the risk of endangering ourselves, because uncertainty is the thing we fear most. And, it's come up a lot in books like The Black Swan and Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. It's become a popular topic, not necessarily, on AM radio, but certainly, people who are interested in ideas are very much coping with this because the world has become a crazy and crazier place and is becoming so every minute. Someone was assassinated last week. Within an hour, if you got on Twitter, there were 14 different conspiracy theories, about that he didn't really, again, it's the usual. And the idea is why that happens is because everybody is trying to find out the truth. And we have been told this lie that there is something called the truth. There's no truth. Truth is a story. What we've got facts. Okay. And the idea is that we are seduced by story. We don't look at the facts. Anybody who's been fleeced out of money by a salesman on television or something, bought something they didn't need. We all know. We're all, make money overnight, lose weight while you sleep. These are all powerful stories. And one of the biggest stories is that we can predict what happened based on what happened in the past. And we have a paradox here, which is that we can't predict what's going on in the future from the past. However, we have no other means to find out what the facts are. So it's a very difficult situation. And so what happens is that we revert to patterns. The mind wants to survive. Our job, our basic job is to keep our bodies alive, right? Procreate, stay alive. And so it does the biological self does whatever's necessary. And that includes a certain amount of delusion. We all know this. They've done studies about women who had kids, and women forget how painful it is to have children, because if they didn't, they would never have another one.
Well, that's why they say that babies are so cute, because it makes it easier.
No, they've forgotten. It's an act of biological self-defense. And not all mothers. I'm just saying this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So what's come to my attention, being aware, and being in the world, is that the stories that kind of help things get sort of moved along are not working at all. And, what's basically happening, what I'm seeing happening, is that people are clinging to their own stories. And they're not looking at things like, these are my opinions, obviously. One of my opinions is that inflation is just as bad as it has ever been, maybe worse. And what that actually means is that every time we lose money because something is more expensive, the people who made the thing that we have to buy make more money. And I don't like that. And I don't think it's fair. And I think that the world has become an increasingly unfair place. And I know I see my friends struggling a lot more than they used to. And even I complain about things being expensive. And someone's winning and someone's losing. And this is the myth. Somehow we're all part of this inflation. No, we're being used. We are just plain old being used. And I don't like it. And it will happen, not until people get angry enough to start shooting people. It will happen only if people are willing to accept the fact that bad things happen. Because when you accept the fact that maybe there really isn't a problem with the food supply, maybe it's just greedy business people who are known for their greed being more greedy, then you can have a different opinion. You can sit down and say, no, let's look at the facts. That avocado that's costing me $6 or whatever it is. Let me go and get on Google or get on Chat, get on Grok, and say, okay, what is the supply chain of that avocado? Is there really a problem? And then you can decide whether, you're participating in the collective need to support the government, or are you being fleeced by some unscrupulous company that is using this as an excuse to charge you more money for that avocado? And my point is that we will all continue to be fooled as long as we have invested interest and we're sold a bill of safety. All right. It's following the herd is not safe. What happens when you follow the herd, if you're a sheep, is you end up as a lamb chop. Okay. So my idea is that because I have so much experience in helping people tell stories and change them, that it would be useful for me to put a book together that is not necessarily a how-to book, but is a diagnostic manual that basically says, look, if you're thinking about this, maybe if you flip the script, it's not really what's going on. And why don't you get on Grok? Why don't you just check your facts? I mean, I'm big on it. I'm like, just the facts, right? No stories, right? I was taught statistics lie and liars use statistics, right? So you have to find out your own truth. And I'm quite passionate on the subject because I'm seeing people around me suffer. And I've seen people suffer. I myself have suffered from all these delusions. I've been married 3 times. So, what kind of story have I been telling myself? Right?
I get you. And I've changed my view of things where I say I pilot by facts now. And I think I always did, but more so now. And I love what you said, that the truth is just a story. It's all relative as to who's telling that story. When it comes to the facts, of course, you need to make sure that your facts are accurate. ChatGPT and all the other, I love them all. I had a friend of mine the other day, ChatGPT 5, the latest one. I'm just messing around. This isn't about politics, by the way, but just put in, what is the predominant political party in the United States? It was wrong. It even asked, who's the president at the moment? ChatGPT was wrong, and then tried to, as he had prompts, are you sure about that, et cetera, et cetera. It was checking facts. Eventually, it actually admitted, this is AI admitting it, that I was in error in terms of that information. I should have went deeper. So I'm just saying, that kind of surprised me. Basic stuff here. You need to make sure your source is accurate when you pilot by the facts. So when we talk about our stories, let's go there. Are a lot of us telling ourselves the wrong story, even about ourselves? Like, we're believing certain things that really aren't true, maybe things that maybe our subconscious is holding us back, and that's creating the story, right?
Well, this is where we get into that subtle thing that we were talking about last week, that I'm hopeful that you and I can unpack and help disabuse people of. There's a subtle blame involved, that somehow it's us. And the answer is no, it is us, and it's also not us. Again, people can't live with paradox. The paradox is, so you're born and you got to do stuff to survive. For some reason, the universe decided we would come out in these tiny, helpless bodies and be tended to by people who maybe should not be tending to it, or maybe should. Okay, nothing was sure. And we did what our biological imperative is, which is to survive. That is what all species try to do. And what was necessary was often things that had nothing to do with what we would prefer. Survival basically shuts down things like preferences, free will, choice, etc., because you're in survival mode. Right? So then we sort of get older, and then we start to realize that we don't feel good about ourselves. And we're told because we have a problem with ourselves. The problem that we had is that we were forced to make all of these compromises to get to the point where we could worry about having the problem about how we felt about ourselves. And instead of being comforted and said, look, you did what you needed to do, now you can make some different choices, we are blamed. So we go to therapy, we take on meditation, we go back to religion, we do all kinds of palliative things. We try to find a story, if you get my point here, that makes us feel better, because the real story is almost unbearable. The fact of the matter is, yes, we have betrayed ourselves consistently since birth. It was necessary. Why isn't that okay? Well, you can go look at culture and you easily get an answer. It can't be their fault. It has to be your fault. Right?
Isn't it true? I'm sorry, continue.
No, I just said I don't like that. Please.
Do you feel that the story that a lot of us tell ourselves is riding in the victim mentality? And no judgment here whatsoever, not minimizing anything, but it's almost as if we programmed ourselves to ride that story, to always tell that story from a place of negativity, where we're the victim, or we're addicted to suffering, and that becomes our story.
Yeah, well, being alive is being a victim. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. So, why bother? In other words, we have, right. Eric Frankl said, what you have is you have your attitude. What you have is you have the way you respond to what happens to you. That's where you have the control. But, when you're dying, you're going to die. Okay. You're a victim. You're a victim of life because it's going to end, right? Everything that has causality puts you in that role. But victim has been misclaimed. In other words, little kids, they've done studies on kids who have been in traumatic experiences. The kids always say, well, if I'd been a better kid, this wouldn't have happened. All right. Now, that is a biological survival defense mechanism, which is necessary so that you don't think of your caregiver as being evil. You don't have to understand that things are unexplainable and that life is a series of either non sequiturs or paradoxes. They're either two things that coexist or two things that completely contradict each other. And that the people who are successful at life, like us, find a way to use it as a tool. Not necessarily. So this whole thing that you have in your mind of a victim mentality, this is another layer of brainwashing that most of us have. So I invite you to understand that we are all victims. So since we're all victims, there's no point in even having a conversation. What we want to do is see how much power is possible. That's where I'm going.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm a big proponent, even recently, making adjustments in my life here and there. We're all on a journey. Identifying what steals your power. And
That's it.
And if it's a story that you're telling yourself, maybe you got to look at that story and adjust that story accordingly.
Yes, but maybe you first have to go in asking a much more interesting question, which is, why was it necessary to create that story? You see, we just put ourselves down endlessly. If you just started assuming that most of what you did was right, I have cured so many people of writer's block and all kinds of things by saying, look, you're not procrastinating. You don't know what you want to say. Go in there and do some research, find out what you want to say. Don't sit around and moan about writer's block. Those are the two channels. Oh, I don't know what to write. Well, go find out.
Let's put a microscope on that for just a moment. So that is, when somebody says, I have writer's block, I'm not creative, I can't come up with anything, I don't know what it is. That's the story you're telling yourself. And we've all been a victim of that. If it's not writing something, you have a goal and you're not hitting the goal and you're like, I don't know, it's just, I can't find the energy. I don't know what it is.
Something, right?
That's it. Right. So what you're saying is figure out what it is, do the research, go deep. There's a reason. It's not just, I can't get motivated toward that goal. Maybe you don't want that goal bad enough.
Bingo. Here's the rule. Okay, people say, oh, if only I could have what I want. Here's the story that none of us can face. We have what we want. That's the problem. All right, think about what I just said. In other words, so that person is whining about not whatever it is, right? There's a good reason. There's a concept in Freudian psychology, one of the few that I think is really outstanding. This is a really good one. And the idea is that we don't do anything unless there's something called a secondary gain. So there is a better reason not to do the thing we say we want to do than to do it.
Why is that again?
Very simply, okay, you risk rejection. Okay, and remember, we're all still on a survival level. We get kicked out of the cave, we die.
Sure. Sure. So that let's say that goal is floating out there. You've been thinking about it. You want it. You think you want it, but you're not going to move forward toward it because, well, it's back to the beginning. The fear of failure. The fear of failure.
No, it's too. That's too simple, Steve. You're too smart for that. The point is, the biological imperative says, "What's our first job? Survive." What does it most fear? Change. Okay. What is change?
100%.
So it's not fear. It's see, this is what I mean. It's all blaming you for everything. It's having an appropriate reaction to something that could threaten the biological imperative's life. So what you have to learn to do is reason with yourself and explain to yourself in a way that works on a deep level, which is why the word of the day, these techniques where you go deeply into your creative unconscious work so well. Then the biological imperative goes, oh, I see. When you're smiling, you're actually healthier. You're more likely to stay alive. Well, okay, maybe we should add happiness to this mix. Oh, I see. You're being miserable because you didn't get the job you wanted is making you sick. Oh, I see. But that part of us has not evolved. That part of us is still in Maslow's survival mode. And we blame ourselves for being sensible. I don't get it. I do get it exactly why, but I really, really, really am angry about that. And I resent having been fooled and manipulated for a part of my life. And that's probably why I'm writing the book, because I really want other people to start to understand it's not your fault. If you continue to do it, it's your fault. If you are willing to not know about it now that you know that you could know about it, it's your fault. But at this moment, the basic biological imperative says, we've gotten this far. We're alive. Why would we change anything? The story that we're using is working.
Well, totally. Change is something that paralyzes many of us, if not most of us. Nobody wants change. We like this. We have to continue doing what we're doing. But going back to that goal that somebody might have, what could be some of the reasons why they're not hitting that goal or moving toward it or procrastinating and all of it? It could be many reasons, I'm sure, but what do you think is some of the fundamental reasons?
There's one core reason which doesn't need to be analyzed. It is the cost of the risk of trying. Okay, we are not taught. We're not taught about risk assessment. We're not taught about probabilities. We don't learn anything about how the world actually works because almost no one knows it does. Some of us do. And so the secondary gain is where you have to look. In other words, if someone is not doing something they say they want to do, there is a better reason for them not to do it. If you go with that equation, your life will immediately change. So, for example, I was a very heavy smoker at one point in my life, and I really was addicted. I got hypnotized, and I did all these things. And finally, it occurred to me that if I stopped smoking, I would not be able to control my anger. That husband, I was married to a couple of them, this particular husband. And I went, wow, I haven't stopped smoking because I'm afraid that if I stop smoking, I'll leave my husband because I'm so mad at him. I have to make a choice. Am I going to die of cancer, which my mother and my stepfather and my grandmother did? Or am I going to stop smoking and let the chips fall where they may? Until that moment, there was not a chance in hell that I would ever stop smoking for long. The moment I realized that, not a minute later, I found something that would work. It's not like it was a magic pill. I found that if I like to chew gum, so there was a time this new thing had come out called Nicorette gum.
Yep.
I thought, well, smoking works on a couple of levels, different levels. There's again, finding the facts. Why do people smoke? They smoke because they want a friend. They smoke because they want to control their emotions. They smoke because they're addicted to tobacco, to nicotine rather. So, and I'm still an ex-addict. My mouth waters when I talk about this. It never goes away. But I made a choice to address all three of those issues. And I did leave my then husband because he made me that angry. And it was a choice of literally my future life. And that was why I think I was able to make the choice. In other words, it was a blessing, not a curse, because it was so, it was a fact. I was going to get cancer if I didn't do this.
Well, with a family history, yes, and continuing, the probability is a lot higher. That's a fact. That's a fact. But even before, when I said fear of failure, of reaching that goal, isn't that real? Even, for example, let's say you have the goal, you're happy. If I hit it, I'm going to be happy. It's going to be good. But if I don't, I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be deflated. I'm not going to feel good about myself. So the secondary gain here is just not to do it because I'm pretty good now. I don't want to be disappointed if I fail in that goal.
Disappointment on a biological level is much different than it is out here when we think about it. Okay, disappointment, there's a part of our brain right next to our pituitary gland called the habenula. It's a little gland in there. It is the one that controls our fear of failure, and it tries to prevent us. It's a very destructive, our inner critic, that's where it actually lives. It's there to keep us safe. It's misguided, but it's there to keep us safe.
Well, yes, keep us safe. That's what we want, essentially. Even in your smoking situation, we could say in a marriage, maybe there's some safety. Maybe it's not the best. Been there, done that. Like, yeah, this is the known. I got this. Not exactly the way I think it should be, but I'm just going to continue doing this, even though I know I probably shouldn't. But there's safety in that. And what comes when you make it? Twice for me. When you make that change, everything changes. So that's uncomfortable.
So one of the ways that you can aid and assist yourself is there's one simple question, which one of my therapists taught me. It was great. He said, you only have to ask yourself one question. If it's 51% better than not being in the relationship, then good. As soon as it gets to be 50 or 49%, you got to go. And it was a very good slide rule because it's a biological slide rule. So I think that what you and I are in agreement, but what I'm saying is that a word like failure and words like fear, these words are stories. Do you understand? They hold so much nuance that we're not talking about what we think we're talking about. Because the stories are simple, the words are symbols. So, we're thinking about being chased by a bear or something. We're not actually having an open discussion of the concept of fear. It's all colored by our stories.
And it's just a word. It's just a word. What does that word truly mean to each individual person in every situation? Yeah. And that could tie back to some facts, potentially, your lineage, your history, the way you were brought up, things that happened to you. Those are facts.
Yeah. Fears of loneliness. Loneliness, remember, being kicked out of the cave is the most primal fear. So when you're in a bad marriage.
Fear of abandonment. Yeah.
Yeah. And because on the biological level, abandonment or abandoning is seen as creating potential death. It's much more serious than it is on an emotional level.
100%. And that's, some of that is fact because there have been studies shown that males who are married versus single, the married males live longer. Fact. Just piloting. I just look at the facts. That's research.
Fact. It's fact. A bad marriage is better than no marriage for a lot of people.
And then there's that too, depending on the entire situation. Where are you with this book?
Well, I'm just finishing up a book proposal because there's a lot to this. There are a lot of layers to this, and the experience I'd like my reader to have, is to understand how in danger you are. This is not optional. Going to a therapist is not. We're not living in a world where that stuff matters much anymore. The story that your money is not losing money is not. A therapist can't help you. The church can't help you. You have to look at it and go, okay, this is a serious situation. I'm getting the same salary, and the money that I'm getting is worth, 7% less every year. What am I going to do? Now that's the level on which I think we are at. So the book is called Plan Your Escape. Okay, get free from stories that are killing you. I mean, the show will change, but Plan Your Escape is the basic concept. The idea is understand that you need to escape from your own stories.
I was just going to ask you that question. What is the escape? So the escape is the stories that you're telling yourself.
The escape is to see them, not to judge them, but to understand and acknowledge them and to remove this constant blaming the victim thing that is going on in the subtext of all of our current cultural literature.
You said something earlier a few times, and it I don't know why, but it's standing out for me. 4 words. It's not your fault.
That's the message.
Yeah. Plan your escape. It's not your fault.
That's good. I'm probably going to use that. It's much better than what I had. Thank you.
But it's marketing guy over here. There's something in that where I feel better hearing that because I'm sorry. Say it again. I'm sorry.
I have to let someone in. It's my 4 o'clock meeting. I finished your thought. Just give me 1 second.
Maybe the person she's letting in is the publicist for the book or the publisher. You never know. You just never know. By the way, while she's getting the door there, Marilyn Horowitz .com is her website. If you want to learn more about her books, she's got so much insight up there. The Word of the Day, just a fantastic book. Oh, and we're back. I was giving out your website.
Thank you very much. Yes.
But just final thought here. It's not your fault. It's not like we need a scapegoat or an excuse, but it's not. When you think of look at limiting beliefs, all the things that we went through as kids that's holding us back, and we're beating ourselves up on it. And we're not moving our lives forward, and we're picking the wrong relationships, and blah, on and on and on. It's not your fault.
It isn't. And thank you. I'm going to retitle my book proposal. You can take a look at it for me.
Send it over.
But anyway, thank you so much. I mean, but that really, I mean, again, if you and I can understand this, then a lot of people who listen to you are going to be really, really happy with themselves, because as soon as you take that off, the opposite, Landmark Forum and all these things say, just accept all the responsibility and that frees you up. And the answer is that's true, but it doesn't help you solve the problems.
This is really, we were saying the same thing in a different way, but it's not your fault says it all. And it's, again, not a release, not just put it on somebody else, but the things that are holding us back and challenging us and all of that, it's really not our fault. We were born wonderful, fresh children, babies, infants, and then life happens. Yes. And I don't know about you, but I had no say in when I got bullied on the playground, or I was the fat kid and all of that stuff. It wasn't my fault. But what internalized, that's the story.
Because the alternative is understanding that you are not in control and that you are a victim. You really are.
Yeah. Wow.
You're not a pretend victim. You're a real victim.
MarilynHorowitz.com. Wonderful books. You can find out what she's done so far. Her system for moving your life forward, also enhancing your creativity, and more is there. Thank you for today.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yep, you got it. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind, like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind, like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama, like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.